Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's Sunday morning, bright and early. Mind, body, and soul. This is how we get through. Daylight savings times got me all messed up. My watch, I got the Casio G-Shock on this morning, and it is atomic, so it gets a signal, I think, from a tower in Colorado about once every morning at, what is it? It received it this morning at 1:08 a.m. So perfect time. It's also solar. I love this little watch. My other watches, I'm gonna have to set them. I don't understand this daylight savings time bullshit. I don't get it. Oh, you can explain it to me all you want. It has to do with the farmers. It has to do with World War II. I don't fucking care what it's for. It doesn't make sense to me. Let's get into our study group for warriors. My hardcore heads. I got several pages to talk about. Let's try to get through a couple of them. Here's the first thing I was thinking about earlier in the week. You can't straighten your life out with hope. You have to be running from something. Fear is a much better motivator. You might get sick of hope. But when you're afraid of something, I don't care how sick of it you are, you'll get up and run because you're afraid of it. So I straightened my life out. I had someone ask me the other day, what keeps me on that straight and narrow path? Why don't I stray? And I don't stray. Some of you have this kind of rubber band effect with your personal growth where you take a little leap forward and then you snap back. Not me. Some days are better than others, but I don't take a step backwards. And it's not hope that gets me. It's not this desperate need to get to a goal on a horizon that keeps me from going back to my old ways, becoming a drug addict, being a criminal, whatever. No, it's not hope that keeps me straightened out. It's the fear of being who I used to be. It's the fear of being lost in the valley of the shadow of death, of being alone in this world without a connection to God, of being punished by the world, of being a demon. That's what I look back on myself like. I was possessed by a demon. I was so incredibly weak. It's so funny how you have gangster rap and gangster movies, and they portray gangsters as these tough guys, but I see them as such broken weaklings. I look at myself and all the people in the past that I knew, all the drug addicts and all the gang members, all the criminals and the tough guys, all broken men. So someone asked me the other day, what keeps me on the straight and narrow? What keeps me disciplined? What keeps me from going backwards? And it's a fear of going back to who I used to be. And another thing that keeps me going is a promise. I don't break promises. Especially a promise that you make with God. And I promised God. God came to get me. Oh, I didn't go groveling. Please save me. I know I fucked up. Please save me. It's not how it happened for me. You might have been your story. It wasn't mine. Oh, I was a knucklehead. God came for me several times, and I said, I don't want you. Finally, he came for me and dragged me out of that party, dragged me out of that lifestyle like an angry parent. You're coming with me, boy. You're my son. That's how it happened. I didn't feel like I really had a choice. And I agreed. I went along with it. I rejected it several times over years. And I finally went along with it. And I promised God. I made a verbal promise to God at the Wailing Wall in Israel that I was going to walk this path. And I wasn't going to fuck up. No matter what. No matter how hard it gets. That I'm going to stay moving forward. I'm going to keep my promise. So that's my story. I don't know how some of you do it. All you're doing is waking up every morning with this little wish and this little hope in your heart of some sort of fantasy that you've created on the horizon. Not me, man. I'm running from hell. And I have a promise to the Lord to keep. Let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about harmless citizens. A harmless citizen who looks virtuous on the surface. This is the victim. Right? Isn't that the persona that a lot of men are trying to portray themselves as, is a harmless man who looks virtuous on the surface? You know, victims are really dangerous. They have this wounded bird mentality, a wounded animal. If you approach a wounded dog, for example, you have a stray dog and it's wounded and you want to help it, you want to rescue it, that's a really hard approach, because the dog may bite you. There's a good chance that dog's going to lash out at you once you go to try to reach for it. People are the same way. And the victim mentality makes you like that, where you're at a point of your survival where all you can do is fight. You're in this sink or swim moment where you have to fight against everyone. And you harmless citizens who are pretending to be virtuous, you act like rabbits, but you're really devils. We have a society of frauds, of liars. A bunch of weak losers pretending that they live in a utopia, trying to create a utopia that's really just a hellhole. Go look at any urban city. Your postmodernist bohemian utopia it's my nightmare. I was talking with a family member the other day and they were talking about DC, how much they love DC, and I just sat there listening to that shit like with disgust. Fuck DC, man. It's literally hell to me. Literally. Not hell like, oh, it's like hell. It's literally hell. Let's move on to the next one. Some of you get this shit, some of you don't. Remember COVID? I was thinking about this, talking about this with a buddy of mine earlier in the week. Isn't it weird how they did us with the COVID arguments? I was so shocked. Especially that liberals and progressives revealed themselves to be such bitches to the government. People in my own family demanded that I obey the government. What the hell are you talking about? Who the fuck you think you're talking to? Obey the government? Where'd you guys come up with this bullshit from? But they promote it. And if you don't obey the government, you should be put to death. We should force vaccines on people door to door, and anybody who refuses it should be put to death. I had family members of mine actually think that shit. If I question the vaccine, I question, well, it only came out in a couple months. Usually it takes 3 years to make a vaccine. They put it out in 3 months, 3 weeks, whatever it was. It was rushed to market. I don't know if it works. I don't know if I want to take it. Well, I was supposed to have faith in science. How dare you? People were so angry at me because they didn't have faith in science. I don't want to take your leap of faith. You can't force me to have faith in something, especially if I'm questioning it. It's like you're just trying to push me off a building and telling me that's freedom, telling me that's safety. You know, we had this whole debate about individual rights versus collective safety. And collective safety doesn't seem to work very well. I think individual rights is more of where I'm at. When we're talking about society as a whole and how to keep society moving forward, it gets tricky though. Because collective safety, what does that even mean? You know, we have cops and they protect and serve the collective, not just an individual. it would be a weird world that we would live in if we had to each hire our own private security guard, and there was no collective security force. There was no police force protecting all of us. So we like collective safety in some ways, but individual rights is really where it's at. If you have to boil it down to one or the other, I think I have to give up my access to police. I can protect my own house. That's what all the guns are for. What I want is individual rights. The right to make my own decision, the right to think what I want to think, to believe what I want to believe. Let's move on to the next one. Here's a little bit of advice. Spend more time in silence to connect with yourself. Let's go to the next one. You don't learn to be a man from the outside world. People don't teach you how to be a man. Your father isn't going to teach you how to be a man, because you're not him. You discover your manhood from within. There's a certain point when, sure, you can mimic adults as a kid, but you don't really become a man until you realize it. It's a realization. You kind of just wake up one day and decide, yeah, I'm there. This is it. And it includes a confidence in your own survival, a certain type of wisdom and leadership. And it also includes, your manhood includes a certain level of masculinity. Now, masculinity should be about 80-20. 80% of you should be masculine, only 20% of you should be feminine. We have a yin and yang. Everybody has a masculine and a feminine. Everybody. But if you're 60-40 or 50-50, yeah, you might be a little fruity. You might not really be taken seriously as a man. You might want to work on masculinity. 80-20 is a better mix for that recipe. Let's do another couple. I got 7 more pages. Isn't it interesting that 80% of suicides have always been men? That's not just recent, always, throughout history, for thousands of years. 80% of suicides have always been men. But what psychiatrists have recently discovered is that 50% of those suicides of men, so if we take just the men that are committing suicides, 50% of the men that are committing suicides show no signs, none, no signs of mental illness or depression or anxiety or anything like that. 50%, and they're killing themselves with no history of mental illness, no signs of it. I just think that's crazy, man. Here's another one. Psychiatrists say 50% of men in therapy who claim to have mental illness actually don't. They just have issues connecting with others, really. That's the main thing. They just have issues with relationships. They have a hard time having relationships, and they think they're crazy. There's a term, I'll end it here, called thwarted belongingness. Thwarted belongingness. And a lot of people try to connect with others, and it may not go well at first, for whatever reason. And our belongingness, our sense of belongingness gets thwarted. And that in itself can send us into a self-isolated, depressed state. We tried, I tried, and then you give up. And you retreat to your cave, feeling lonely. And it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think I've experienced it before. This thwarted belongingness. And I've been pondering it. I think it's worth fighting against. When you feel sad, when you feel like that childlike sense where you're not included, you're not wanted in the group, don't trip on that. Don't dwell on that too much. Block that shit out. Stay a king. Food for thought.